Okay, I want to thank all of you for coming out on this rainy night, even though it's not so rainy, but it's still a schlep. And I want to thank a few people for being sponsors. Elisa Hochstead from Beitar. Thank you so much. Elisa is honoring the memory of her mother-in-law, Ani Bat Reuven, who passed away 40 years ago? 29 years ago tonight on Purim Katan, Erev Purim Katan, exactly. And Hannah Simpson, not here, but she is here, sorry. She's honoring the memory of her mother, Florence Bat Michael, and Susie Rosenfeld, and she's not here. She's honoring Dina and Yitzi, and may God give them both lots of strength. Amen. And then we have our anonymous donors and all those who helped out now. Thank you so much. A special thanks to Avat Zion, the shul, and to Rachel Gordon, who organized it all. And it's just wonderful to be back here. And I really wanted to stand in the rabbi's box. And I asked him if I could, and he said, it's not my box. You could stand there. But Dina's not as lofty as I am. Okay. Tonight is Purim Katan, which is a smaller Purim because it's Adar Rishon, the first Adar of two Adars that happens every few years. So we say when the month of Adar comes in, our joy increases. Meshenichnas Adar marbin besimcha. And what it really means is that we need to increase our joy. It's not going to just happen around us. We can't wait for happiness to happen. We have to make sure it's there. So a lesson for life is also the joy is not associated just with Purim and Shushan Purim, but it leads up to Pesach. So we don't have one point. When this happens, I'm going to be happy. When this happens, I'm going to be happy. But we have to work on being happy. Now, I was putting up posters the other day. Did anyone see any posters anywhere? And a man was there, and I said, "You want one for your wife?" And he says, she's not in the country. And he sees me post up the flyer, and he says, "Oh, I know Yitzi Hurwitz." I said, "How do you know Yitzi Hurwitz?" He says, "I was just listening to the Happiness Hour by Dennis Prager, which is every Friday, and Dennis knows Dina and Yitzi very well. And Dennis said on the radio that the happiest person he ever met was Yitzi. And you want to see real happiness, that's where you go." And Dina's here to share her happiness, her joys, her life. Okay, here she is, Dina Hurwitz. And for those who don't know, Dina is my daughter. You see? Ma. We kind of look alike.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, who was here last time I spoke? Okay, so quite a few people have heard some of this before, but the years have gone by and life has changed, and we've learned a lot in the past few years as well, so it's a little bit different than it was before. But I'll give you a little background. I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, a beautiful place, and I was in a school there where I was one of 5 girls in my class, really small. And when I was going into 9th grade, I asked my parents if they would send me back to New York because I wanted a social life, and it wasn't social enough for me. There were no friends that I could walk to on Shabbos, none that had a kosher home, and I wanted more. Surprisingly, they agreed, and I went to Beis Rivka in Crown Heights for 9th grade. It was really like a culture shock for me. I went from being one of 5 girls to one of over 80 girls, and surprisingly, I'm not really very social. I thought I might be before then, and then I realized not so much. For me, the most significant part of that year is I met my husband that year. I lived at my cousin's house, and my cousin had a 16-year-old son, and his best friend was Yitzi, and he lived across the street. And when Yitzi would come over, the house would light up. his energy and his joy was something that you couldn't help but feel. And he was 16 and I was 14, and he would walk into the room and I would turn red and walk out of the room. And then, thank you, one time, and then I told my mother, that's who I'm gonna marry, and she kind of laughed at me, but I hate to be wrong, so. Yitzi's the only one I dated. I was 21 when we got married. We just celebrated our 23rd anniversary. And being that he was the one I wanted to marry since I was 14, he was everything I wanted. He is very, very happy. And he loves people. He loves teaching. He's a great communicator. He is a musician, and he composes music, and he sings beautifully. And he dances, but he doesn't just dance with his body. His whole being dances. And his dream in life was to be a shliach of the Rebbe. He wanted to go out to a city somewhere and teach people how beautiful it is to be Jewish and what an amazing tradition we have, what amazing Torah we have. And for somebody who loves people and who loves Torah, connecting the two was so easy for him. We had a tiny Chabad house. It was in our home for most of the time. We started off in Colorado for a year, and then we moved to a little city in California called Temecula, which I grew up in California and had never heard of. So a really small city. There was like 50,000 people when we moved there, and over the next few years it really got bigger. And the mayor used to tease me that I was single-handedly responsible for the population growth of Temecula, which just shows you what a small city it was. So we moved to Temecula with 2 children in 1999, and then we had 5 more children over there. For chinuch, we used to drive the kids to school in San Diego. It's quite a drive. It was an hour and a half when we were going with traffic and 50 minutes against traffic. So I spent a lot of time on the road. And we worked hard to build up our Chabad house, and Yitzi used all of his talents. Every single one of his abilities he used in his position, in his shlichut. But things were tough over there. It was a small city, and there was a crash of the economy, which hit our city really hard. And Yitzi had to find some new ways to make some money. 7 children in a Jewish school is quite expensive. I'm sure everybody here knows that. So Yitzi got 2 more jobs. One of the jobs was that he worked at a dairy farm as the mashgiach, which meant that he slept in his car 4 nights a week and would wake up every hour and check and make sure everything is still kosher. And the other job is he was a chaplain for a state mental facility. So if somebody does a crime and pleads insanity, they go there, and he taught classes and he did counseling over there. And he worked really, really hard. The hardest working person I know. And the only thing that made him sad was that he couldn't spend more time doing what he really wanted to do, which was Chabad of Temecula. But Yitzi has such a great attitude, and he is able to support his family, which made him so happy. And he spent the time there doing everything he could. Like when he was at the farm, he would prepare for his classes, and he would make all of his phone calls. And I remember one time I went to visit him at the farm, bring him dinner, and he was playing guitar to the cows. For those of you who know American songs, he was playing Old MacDonald Had a Farm. And he was so funny, because I went there, I had a little baby that I was nursing, and I went there, and all the cows came out to greet me, and Yitzi's like, they know, you're in the same boat. He just has like such a positive way of thinking of things, and of like every situation he really puts his whole self into. And he always does the very best that he can. He's like very hands-on. He fixes the cars, he builds furniture. He's super dad. And this attitude, it was interesting because we always think that we have good attitudes when life is easy, and what are we going to do when it gets hard? I don't have that kind of attitude. happiness is a bit of a struggle for me. And I know that it's important. And I know that whatever you do in life, if you're happy, it's better. And Yitzi used to give me all the books on happiness, right? Dennis Prager's book as well, Happiness is a Serious Problem. And I used to tell him, I'm like, I know it's important, but I don't know where the switch is. I don't know where the button is that says that you turn on to be happy. I know all the reasons to be happy, but I don't really know how to do it. Shortly after Yitzi turned 40, he tells me that his tongue isn't working so well. Every once in a while, it just slurs his words and it feels heavy. So I told him maybe you need to sleep a little bit in a bed. Apparently, when you're 40, you're an adult and you have to take care of yourself. So you can't just have the hours that he keeps. So he took off some time and he came home every night, and in the beginning it helped, and then it came back, and then we started seeing doctors. So this was Erev Rosh Hashanah, 2012. And he went to the doctor, and the doctor told him that he has a sinus infection. So he went on a round of medication, and Erev Yom Kippur, nothing is better. So he goes back to the doctor, and he says it's a very severe sinus infection. More medication. And by Simchas Torah, he went to his first neurologist appointment. Now, at this time, our kids were in two different schools. The older four kids were 11, 12, 15, and 16. Were going to school in Los Angeles, and they would come home every Shabbos. And the younger kids, 6, 7, and 8, were going to school in San Diego, and we schlepped back and forth every day, which is, by the way, 1,000 miles a week. I'm not sure what that is in kilometers, but it's far, to give the kids a good Jewish education. So that first neurologist appointment was on a Friday, and I couldn't go with him. I had to go to Los Angeles to pick up our kids. And he calls me on the way home, and he says that the doctor said it's one of 4 things. And he lists the first 3, which I wasn't really familiar with, but the 4th one, the most severe one, he says is ALS. So I said, okay. I didn't really know anything about ALS. And we're sitting in traffic. So I do what we shouldn't do, and I Google it. I figure, how bad could it be? So let's go to the worst one and find out what's the cure. And I'm Googling cures for ALS, and nothing comes up. So I thought maybe I spelled it wrong, and I try again, and nothing but these ads start popping up for preparing for the end of life, and ventilators, and hospital beds, and feeding tubes, and my heart turned to ice. And I put my phone away, because you're not supposed to be on it when you're driving. And I didn't say a word to the kids. And I come home, and I said to Yitzi, this could be really bad. And he said, yeah, but we're not going to cry on Shabbos. And for the next 6 months, we went to doctors, till finally we got a confirmation that this is that he has ALS. So ALS is a motor neuron disease where the brain stops communicating with the muscles, and they all slowly die. And there's no cure for ALS as of yet. And Yitzi was lucky enough to have one of the most aggressive types of ALS. It starts in the mouth. It's called bulbar onset. And they tell you that the lifespan of somebody with this type of ALS is 2 years from the onset of symptoms, and we were a good 6 months into that time. So Yitzi was diagnosed on the day of his 41st birthday, which incidentally was Adar, Beis Adar. It will be soon. And after we got this diagnosis, leading up to the diagnosis, the next worst thing for me was, how am I going to tell the children? And so I spoke to people. We have an organization called Chai Lifeline. I don't know if you have it here in Israel, but they help families that have serious illness. And I spoke to their counselors and therapists. How do I talk to my kids? And they gave me some advice. And so we were driving home. And it was a long drive. And I asked him, what do you want to do that you haven't done yet? And those of you who heard this before know what I thought. I thought he was going to say, take me to Hawaii. But he right away said, we never wrote a Torah. And like he was obviously thinking of that too. We actually started a month later, and on his 42nd birthday, we finished and we brought it to our Chabad house, and it was just such a very special event. But Yitzi had scheduled a birthday gathering for himself that night, a Farbrengen, where his friends would get together, and I asked him if he wants to cancel it. And he said, "Why would I want to do that?" So I said, "Okay, well, that's nice. But I'm not going to help you," because I had to prepare for this, telling the kids. Now, in these months leading up to it, I didn't sleep and I didn't eat and I hardly could breathe. But Yitzi, he didn't get fazed at all. He just kept doing what he has to do. And he was so certain that, first of all, he's not going to get that diagnosis. But if he does, it's because Hashem needs him there. And for whatever Hashem needs him there, he's going to do it. And then when he does what he needs to fulfill over there, he is still sure that Hashem will then heal him, because he no longer needs to be like that. His attitude never changed. So he went to the Chabad house to prepare for this gathering that we thought maybe 10 or 15 people would come, because we live very far from everybody. And he had 350 fellow Chabad Shluchim show up to this. And each one of them has told me that they thought they were going to come in and uplift him. But they found somebody who didn't need any uplifting. As a matter of fact, they all left feeling very inspired. I was at home and I got a knock at the door. Some young 21-year-old rabbi that I had never met says to me, "I have a car full of food." It was a little hard to get kosher food in Temecula. It keeps getting better. And I told him, I said, "I'll show you the fridge and the freezer and a couch where you can sleep on, but I can't talk to you tonight." I was so nervous. And he actually stayed for 6 months. And he helped with everything. He drove the kids to school. He planned vacations for us. While Yitzi can still move and still walk, that we can have great family memories. And he photographed everything and made us a beautiful album. He also was like an annoying big brother that my kids never knew they wanted. But a very good distraction for everybody, except my daughter, who was the oldest up until then. And the next day, we told the kids. And this was really the hardest moment of my life. So the little kids, very simply, that your father is sick, and this is what it's called, and you see that it's hard for him to speak, and it's going to get harder, and his body is going to get weaker, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we know that Hashem is watching us and helping us. The bigger kids was harder. So personally, I think honesty is super important. And I know that if I'm going to really shake their entire foundation, at least they're going to know that they can trust me. That's never going to change. So I was very honest with them. And I told them what the disease is and what it means and the lifespan the doctor has given us, the doctors. But I also gave them certain guidelines. I told them over the next few months and years, you're going to feel a lot of emotions. You're going to be happy or sad or scared or angry, disappointed, and it's all fine. You can feel all of that. The only thing that's not acceptable is if you use this as an excuse to ruin your life. The next thing I said to them is we don't have to figure it all out now. We're going to take it one moment at a time. And we're going to keep trying. And maybe one day we'll be able to plan a day in advance or a week in advance. But for right now, we're just going to do 1 minute at a time. And the third thing I said to them is, please don't Google it. Don't Google it. Okay. They asked a bunch of questions. There was a lot of crying. And eventually everybody went to bed. The next morning, I have to make lunches for my little ones who are going to school. The ones from LA stayed home the rest of the week. But my 11 and 12-year-old sons were sitting at the table in the kitchen talking. And when they saw me come in, they looked up and they said to me, "Mom, are you saying he's going to die?" And of course, I was feeling so silly for deciding to be honest with them. But I told them, this is what the doctors say, but the doctors don't know your father, and they don't know our Rebbe, and they do not know Hashem. And anything is possible. And then I have to make sandwiches. Now, kids can move from one to the other very fast. I'm not so much. I'm shaking. And my 12-year-old son says to me, he says, "Mommy, just do one moment at a time. Just the sandwiches now." A few weeks later, my oldest comes down crying hysterically. And I said, "What happened?" She says, "I Googled it." And I said, "Why?" She says, "You told me not to." So I said, "I was protecting you." She says, "Well, I know that now." So this time was a really interesting time for us because on one hand, nothing actually changed immediately. You know, everything was a little bit slow. He was losing his speech and his body was getting weaker. But everything changed in your mind, in your dreams. On the other hand, the love that we felt, the love that we saw coming to our family was so incredible that we were all a little bit on a high. It was enough to carry us through that time, no problem. Constant kindness from people and thoughtfulness and beauty all around us. The emotional part, though, is something that I do want to mention for a second, because all of us have experienced this, and I don't think we talk about it a lot, but there is a really serious pain to losing a dream. We dream about our life, what kind of parents we're going to be, how much fun we're going to have when the kids grow up and move out of the house, what kind of grandparents we're going to be. All those dreams are not going to happen. I mean, or the ones that are going to happen very differently. Now, everybody goes through this, whether it's a divorce or a death or a sickness or a loss of a job or a loss of a friend. And we try to get over it really fast without really recognizing this is painful. This is painful, and sometimes you have to allow the dreams to die to make room for new dreams. And the dreams are not your ideal dreams, but there's still dreams to be had. There's still life to be lived. So here we are, and I think to myself, what kind of life are we going to have for the next few years? If it was only me, I would be curled up in a ball crying. But it's not only me. It's the kids. And it's Yitzi. And Yitzi needs to be happy. And he is not going to spend the rest of his life feeling bad for me. So I decided that we are going to do whatever it takes to have a happy home. For me, this was the switch. I had no choice. Now, deciding to have a happy home is a little bit like deciding to lose weight. Nothing happens. You have to make changes, and you have to do things differently. So I made a few conscious changes, and then over the years, things have had to adjust because the kids got older and our situation changed. But these were the baseline of the changes. The first change was that I couldn't take myself so seriously. You know, everybody has dreams of what they're going to be like when they grow up. I had dreams that I would be tall and sophisticated. And it's really hard to pretend to be sophisticated when you're not. And it took too much effort. I'm really good at being silly. And I had to really consciously not take myself so seriously. And be okay being silly and making very corny jokes and embarrassing my kids all the time. My mother's thumbs up over there. She's like, You learned from the pro. Okay. Another thing is that we have a lot of music in our house. So Yitzi was very musical, and the kids, they inherited his musical talent. He played guitar, so they picked up his guitar as they got older. My 3 boys taught themselves guitar, and then in the past year, 2 of my daughters have taught themselves ukulele and then guitar and then piano, and we're starting violin. And I started learning guitar too, and let me just tell you, it's harder when you're older. So when I play a song, I have like 5 kids who can do it better than me. And one of them will eventually recognize the song, and they're like, oh, I can play that, but I play it well. So again, learning to laugh at ourselves, myself, is great. But the music is really important. This is why when somebody is in mourning, they don't listen to music, because music is very, very uplifting. So we have 9 guitars in our house and 2 ukuleles and many other noisemakers and instruments. And it's very interesting to see the kids come home maybe stressed out from school, and they'll go straight to an instrument, and they'll get out of themselves, or they'll just have a way to express it. For my children, for 5 of them anyway, music really works. It doesn't work for everybody, but in our family, it brings a lot of joy and noise to our house. Another thing is I try to say yes as much as I can. If the kids want something and I could afford it, I think to myself, is it going to get in the way of their connection with Hashem? Is it going to get in the way of their character development? Is it going to get in the way of their school or their family relationships? If not, and I could say yes, I say yes. Sometimes as moms, we want to be in control. We want to show them who's boss. And so we say no, because I'm the boss. But here I have these children that are going through an extremely difficult situation. I could say yes to them. Why would I say no? What type of person would it make me if I say no because I can? I really try to say yes to them as much as possible. The other thing is if an argument comes up, and inevitably they do. Now I have 6 teenagers. I think to myself, is this going to matter in 5 years? Most of the time, it's not going to matter in 5 minutes. I don't need them to hear my point of view. I don't need to inflict my opinion on them. If it's not going to matter, it doesn't matter. Right? I'm not talking about having a discussion where you share your views. I'm talking about arguments that come up. Let them be right. Let them think they're right. It's fine. I'd rather have peace in my house than be right. In our house, these things are the general rules that I took upon myself to be happy. And then there's always little things that we do. Recently, this year, I'm finding it hard to do all the conversation. So my older 4 kids are out of the house. Thankfully, my daughter got married this summer. And she lives in New York, in Crown Heights. And the other 3 boys are away. So I just have little kids at home, and it's a whole different mind game. Especially because mostly I had teenage boys at home for years, and now it's like 2 teenage girls, and then my 12-year-old son. It's very different. And I find it hard to be the one making all the conversation. So I started making a fancier dinner a couple times a week and inviting guests over so they do the talking, and hopefully my kids won't notice. And I have more time on my hands because I don't have as many kids at home, and I'm actually really enjoying this. I didn't enjoy cooking so much before, and as a matter of fact, when Yitzi got sick, I absolutely forgot how to cook. And when somebody goes through something, there are things that you could imagine will happen, and then there are things that you don't imagine would happen. And I forgot every recipe I ever knew. I burnt everything. And I just couldn't concentrate on it. And I never would have imagined that. I would have imagined that I don't sleep at night. That I could imagine. I would imagine a lot of things, but that was a new one for me. So I'm relearning how to cook, and I'm really enjoying it, actually. I don't think I enjoyed it last time, but this time I'm enjoying it. But that being said, it's a challenging type of life. Right now, Yitzi he's paralyzed from head to toe. He's been on life support for 4.5 years. And the only thing that moves are his eyes and his smile. Within the difficulties, there is a lot of beauty, but there's a lot of difficulties. So I try to focus on the beauty. We have a lot of visitors. We get about 100 visitors a week. We have a lot of musicians that are doing concerts in LA that stop by today. I don't know what day it is. It's Monday. Today in California, I don't know his name. Shulam Lemmer is coming to my house because he did a concert. We have a lot of amazing people that stop by. My husband has a Gemara class. We live next door to a yeshiva, so the 11th grade learns in his house, in his room every day. He has a minyan every Shabbos, Yom Tov, Rosh Chodesh, and then Monday and Thursday just Kriyas Torah. A lot of people coming to our house. A lot of beautiful things that we get to see. A lot of people doing nice things, good things, mitzvahs in his honor. There's a lot of beauty, and there's a lot of difficulties. And I actually find it harder in the month of Adar to be happy. Yitzi, again, doesn't. He's happy. He always wanted to teach Torah, and he's still teaching Torah. He tells me that he got a promotion because we had a tiny community, and now he writes Divrei Torah that's read around the world. How is it that Hashem gives us challenges and then tells us to be happy? And not little challenges, big challenges. And he doesn't give every person one challenge. It's not like that's your only problem. No, my son doesn't want to learn for his bar mitzvah because everybody else is learning with his father and he can't. That's... Okay, that's my new challenge. Or like which yeshiva to send your kids to, or other things that go on, difficulties with relationships. Everybody has a lot and big challenges. So how does Hashem give you all that and say, you should be really happy this month? And this year, 2 months. You should be happy for even longer. I find it really hard to do that. So I struggle with it. And I want to keep struggling with it. Keep trying, because it's important. So I'm a little jet lagged, so sorry about all the cheers today. So I will tell you what I think helps me. In general, women are very hard on themselves. And many times we have an inner voice inside our head that is the biggest critic we've ever heard. Nobody is as mean to us as we are to ourselves. Sometimes we're repeating words that we heard other times in our life, and sometimes they're just brand new. Our doubts about ourselves. We have, a klal gadol in the Torah that says, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamecha." And most of us spend our whole childhood learning what it means to love our neighbors and to love our friends. And very seldom do we learn about the other part of that sentence, kamocha. It's a balance. You cannot have one without the other. I think that when Rabbi Akiva said that, this is my opinion, people were born with a healthy self-image, and they knew instinctively how to love themselves. And Rabbi Akiva comes to teach them how to love other people, the same way that you love yourself. I don't think that we are born with a healthy self-image, and many of us go through so many challenges that we lose it if we are lucky enough to have any of it. So how do we learn how to love ourselves? I think we have to do the opposite. The same way we love our friends. That's how we have to love ourselves. Most of us, all of us, I'm sure, are really good friends. And when you know that your friend is going through something, you do not use the same words to them that you use to yourself. You don't criticize them, and you don't berate them constantly for not being perfect. We're kind to our friends, and we're generous to our friends, and we're loving and we're patient. So how do we do that for ourselves? Here, and I'm going to give you an example of me because we're all going to be nicer to me than we would be to ourselves, and you'll see. That's how it works. Okay, so I have certain struggles that drive me crazy. In my kitchen, I have 4 junk drawers, and 3 corners are piled high with stacks of mail that I have no idea what's in it, or school stuff or paperwork. And it bothers me that it's there, but I don't have the head to deal with it. And every day it stresses me out. Every day I feel bad that I'm so behind. I gained weight since Yitzi got sick, and it bothers me that I gained weight, and I mean, recently I lost some of it, so I'm happy about that. But for a good 6 years, this really bothered me. And if I would tell that to my friends, they would say to me, "Are you kidding? You get dressed every day. Your kids are fed and they're clean and they go to school and they're happy. What do you care about the pile of mail? Why does that matter so much? You're living through a storm and you're holding on for dear life and you're surviving. So what if your kitchen is messy?" And I get that when I say it to other people. And I get it in my head, but it doesn't feel right in my heart. But we are so hard on ourselves. So there's this concept I learned about, it's called holding space. When you have a friend going through something, you don't judge them, and you don't offer to fix it, and you don't give them advice. But you are there for them, and when they need you, they're going to turn to you. It's a very beautiful concept. And I'm sure we've all done it in our lives without knowing the official term to it. So the question is, could we do that to ourselves? Can we say, Hashem has given me a really hard challenge and he hasn't showed me how to fix it. And until he does, I'm just going to sit patiently by, and I'm not going to judge myself for not knowing what Hashem's plan is. And I'm not going to beat myself up for not knowing what Hashem's plan is. It's hard to do, but it's possible to do. And the more often we can do this, a little step at a time, honestly, the little kindnesses that we show to ourselves make such a big difference to everybody around us. There's another thing that helps me out. We all go through cycles of ups and downs. I look at it like a wheel. When we're on top of the wheel, everything is good. It's like a bird that's gliding in the wind. You don't need to put in any effort. You're just really doing fine up there. The bottom is a scary place. I call it a pit. When I get there, I'm in the pit. It's dark, it's scary, and you don't know how you're going to get out of it. That was kind of perfect. So often we're like, we're in between. Hopefully we spend a lot of time on top, but everybody has bad days. And everybody sometimes gets scared, gets overwhelmed, and doesn't know how they're going to deal with it. So the interesting thing is that most of us and the problems and challenges that we have, we can't fix it for each other, right? But if we can change our perspective a little bit, it changes a lot of how we view it and how we act in our situation. So I learned that this pit is a very useful place. So first of all, by knowing that it's not a horrible place with no value, it helps me tremendously. This is a place that has a lot of value. What value does it have? This is where you learn things. This is where Hashem shows you what you're made of. This is where you learn what a Jewish woman is capable of. And every time you're there, it's going to take a new skill to get out, because Hashem wants you to learn things and to learn more things and to learn more things. Sometimes it will be as simple as buying something new that'll help you get out of a little funk that you're in. And sometimes it'll take weeks of davening and tehillim and meditation And sometimes you hear a song and it just gets you right out of it. And sometimes you need to go for a hike. Whatever works for you. Read a book. Every single time you need to learn something else. And the learning process changes you. We're not meant to be the person we were when we were born. We're meant to be greater and greater and stronger and stronger. And the thing is, being strong never feels like being strong. Being strong feels like you are about to fall apart, but you keep doing what you're supposed to do. It never feels amazing. To other people, it can look amazing. The other thing that I like to do when I'm feeling something that has me in this pit is ask myself, what emotion am I feeling? So we all go through a range of emotions: happy, sad. Happy doesn't get you in the pit. Sad, scared, lonely, angry. What is it that you're feeling right now? Myself, I have a lot of fear. It's usually fear for me. So identify it as fear and ask yourself, do you have a good reason to feel this way? Most of us have these uncomfortable emotions because we have a reason to feel that way. If somebody is sick or if somebody passes away and you're not sad, there's something a little disconnected about you. We have emotions because of life. If you have a good reason to be afraid, then go ahead and be afraid. If you have a good reason to be sad, go ahead and be sad. For me, the idea of raising my kids on my own is terrifying. I have a good reason to be afraid. So when you acknowledge it, you give yourself permission to feel it, it actually passes much faster. You can avoid it for as long as you want, but it doesn't go anywhere. If there's something that is keeping you up at night, if there's an emotion that's pulling you down, if there's a situation in your life that has you troubled, and you ignore it, the situation doesn't go away. Eventually, you have to give yourself permission to feel. Because if you don't, then there's no room for the joy. If you take away permission to feel, you don't just not feel sad. You stop feeling. You need to acknowledge the sadness and make room for the joy. You need to acknowledge the fear and make room for the joy. And what's really interesting is when you allow yourself this kindness, it really does. It passes so much faster. Things are always worse in your mind before you deal with it. Like if you ever have to call the electric company or something, it's always so dreadful, and then it takes 5 minutes and it's over with. Okay, an hour, whatever, it's over with. But this is something that's interesting. A friend of my husband's once told me that Winston Churchill suffered from a really serious depression. And most people that have that type of depression are not as accomplished as he was, and they don't get to where he did in life. So somebody asked him, how do you do it? And he says, I refer to it as my black dog, and it follows me wherever I go. And every once in a while, I have to turn around and say, oh, there you are. And then I keep going. Sometimes we have these emotions and we think that we're made up of this. This is who we are. Right now, I am a depressed person. That is not who we are. We are an incredible neshama that is going through challenges of all sorts and is going through them. But you're not your challenges. And sometimes it's good to think of it one step behind us. And yes, we have to acknowledge it. It doesn't go away. And we have to know, oh yeah, there you are. But it is not it's not what we're made of. We're made of so much more than that. When Yitzi was losing his abilities, what was very interesting is that he never lost himself. And every month he would tell me, oh, this isn't working. And tell me he would type it out on his phone with the thumb, his thumb, that was the only finger that worked. But he never lost himself. And I wonder, like, when somebody says to you, "Who are you?" what are the words that come to your mind? I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, a wife, a friend, not me personally, but lawyer, artist, teacher, whatever it is. These are the things that we use to describe ourselves. Musician. But that's not really who we are. I watched Yitzi lose a lot of the things that were his identity without ever losing himself. There's a saying that's attributed to Stephen Hawking, who had ALS for many, many years. But I know that it's an old Hasidic teaching, way before he was born. We're not a body with a soul, we're a soul with a body. And sometimes it takes looking at somebody like Yitzi, whose body is so broken that all you can see is a soul. But we're all much more than our bodies. We're much more than our troubles. We're much more than our weaknesses. We're all an entire world, and each one of us has so many resources. We have limited resources. We have time is limited, money is limited. We have unlimited resources. We have love and the ability to show kindness and to be generous and to be innovative. And this is unlimited. I think the most important of all that is the love. The love helps us do things that we never thought possible. Yitzi is not just my husband, he's my best friend. He's the best person I know. I'm the type of person that if my kids want me to leave the room, they wiggle their teeth and I'm out. I don't like anything fluids and bones and body related. I can't do it. And I've had to do so much to learn how to take care of him. And it's not like 10 years ago I would have said to you, under a certain circumstance, I could do that. There's no way I can do that. But when we love somebody, we do what we have to do. Whatever we have to do. A couple years ago, Friday night, my daughter broke her arm. They invented a game called Belly Bump. It has to do with a big yoga ball and running and jumping. And it was a great game until she landed wrong. And it was a very difficult week. And this was the only week ever that I told Yitzi after lich benching, I'm going to sleep. Because if I'm not by the Shabbos table, there isn't a parent by the Shabbos table. Right after Lichtzen, she broke her arm. So what did I do? What any sane person would do. I marched into my husband's room and I said, you get out of bed right this second. I can't even look at it. And he just laughed. There's no way I can look at it, right? I mean, her arm was bent in a way it's not supposed to bend. And of course, it took me a couple minutes to get over that. And she had broke through both bones, and it was a very interesting Friday night. But in the process of Yitzi's getting sick, I learned how to give shots and give food through the feeding tube. But that's not a big deal. But to change the feeding tube, when Yitzi got the feeding tube put in, the doctor told me if it ever falls out, you got to stick your finger in there because the hole will close really fast. So I came home and told the kids, the doctor says if it ever falls out, I have to put one of your fingers in there because it's going to close really quickly. They never knew anything different. And here, like I learned how to change it, and I was like, how did we get this way? And this is the greatest gift Hashem has given us, the ability to love people. It forces you to go beyond your limitations to do what has to be done. Today, our house is challenging, and finding joy is still challenging. I feel that when you acknowledge the other parts, you make room for the joy. And I think that that's really important. I write a blog. I don't write as often as I used to. And I like to write about the beautiful parts of our life. But every once in a while, I have to acknowledge the hard parts and get them out of the way. It's hard. I haven't heard Yitzi's voice in 5 years. actually, this Adar, his birthday is going to be 6 years since his diagnosis. So we're really grateful for the many blessings and years we've been given. We married off a daughter, which was something we didn't think we would be able to, we didn't think we would be able to do that. Not that she wouldn't get married, but that Yitzi would be there. And interestingly enough, it was really hard. I thought it would be the most joyous occasion. And she was in New York dating, so she'd come home and she would FaceTime us. And we watched her face get happier and happier. And at a certain point, I realized we got to go to New York. This looks like they're going to get engaged, right? And in that second, the thought occurred to me that I'm going to go by myself. I don't know why it didn't occur to me before. And I cried for a month. All those dreams came up again. And you really have to give yourself time to mourn the hard parts, to make room for the joyous parts. Her wedding was incredible. The Kabbalas Panim was beautiful and painful, and the chuppah was so emotional, and the rest of it was just absolute joy. The Kabbalas Panim, she was on a stage, and he couldn't come with a wheelchair to the stage. So the chassan covered her face, and his father gave her a bracha, and then she walked down and put her head in his lap, and we put his hands on her head. There is beauty and there's pain, and it's all mixed together. But you have to do those parts to make room for the joyous parts. And I don't have the magic pill on how to be happy. I just know that if there wasn't happiness in this life, it would be too painful to exist. It's not, you cannot live like this for 6 years in a state of sadness. It's not normal for people to live that way. Every year we have different challenges, and this year the challenge is we're all exhausted. It's hard to be brave all the time. It's hard to have so many people in our house all the time. It's hard to make plans with my kids, and then wonderful people stop by, and we have to change all those plans all the time. So now we have to find new ways. And the truth is, I'm not sure of them yet. And I used to sit and talk to Yitzi for hours. Before he got sick, he was the talker. And I'm a listener. I'm not a talker. And it worked really well for us. And it was really hard to shift, but I had to fill this space. And I would read him books. And this year, I'm just too tired. And I said to him, I just want to sit with you in the room, even if I don't talk. So he'll put on like a lecture or some music, and we'll just sit together. He's really busy, actually. He writes a lot, and it takes him a long time. And he's actually grateful I'm not talking for part of that time, so he can concentrate. But I want to share with you a little something about communicating with people. When Yitzi first got the trach put in, it was an emergency, and it was a crazy, challenging time. And at that time, he lost his ability to communicate because the thumb, which was how he typed for months, stopped working. And he had to learn how to use a computer that reads his eyes. So the first sentence he wrote to me took him 3 hours, maybe more, to type out. The first thing he wrote. And he wrote, "Good morning, Dina, my love. I'm sorry you're tired," because I'm always tired. "I love you and I appreciate you more than words." Now all of us can speak. And we take it for granted that we can speak. And we don't tell people. Now he does that in less than a minute. And he sends it to me on a text message every morning. I get that. Some mornings, some days I also get another text that says, "You fetch so nicely." But it's much easier for him to communicate. But I want to share that with you because I want to remind us that we don't have to wait to say those things. Those are things that we should say every day. And it should never be hard for us. It should be easy. It should be as easy as eating chocolate. I'm going to share a little story with you. And then I think we're going to end off, and if anybody has questions, well, I'm here for a while. This is a little story of Hashgacha Pratis. So Yitzi had really bad vision, and he had really thick glasses. And in the summer in Temecula, it gets really hot. I really don't know Celsius, but maybe somebody can help me out. But it gets like 110 degrees over there. I think that means really hot. Okay. A little less than the Yam HaMelech. Okay, it gets hot. And even if you have your air conditioning on at home, it cools it maybe 20 degrees, so it's still hot. And I had all the kids home every summer, and once, a couple times a week, Yitzi would take the kids to the pool. And there's like a little community pool, and there's lifeguards, and he would leave his glasses in the car, and he would go swimming with the kids, and he had to deal with them that he's going to call their name, and they have to tell him where they are. So he knows the general vicinity of where the kids are located because he cannot see them. And again, there's lifeguards. So for about 10 years ago, for a birthday anniversary gift, I got him laser eye surgery. And he was so excited to take the kids to the pool. And summer comes, and he takes the kids to the pool, and 5 minutes later, he's home. I said, what happened? He says, Dina, do you know what people wear at a pool? He said, I'm a rabbi. I can't be there. Which really upset me because I lived for those 1 hour breaks, but Yitzi's computer, it can't see your eyes if you have glasses. So it was really great that we had that done long before he needed it, because that's very helpful for us. I wish I had magic to make everybody happy. But the truth is that being happy has to be something that comes from everybody, and it has to be a struggle. Because if it wasn't, Hashem would give us so many reasons to be happy, and the truth is he does. But he also gives us challenges. So we have to decide what we're going to focus on. Because whatever you focus on is what you're going to see. If you focus on your challenges, if you focus on all the things that went wrong, your whole life is going to be about that. And if you focus on the good and you focus on the blessings, that's what you're going to see everywhere. And it's a choice that we have to make every day, because it doesn't get easier. I mean, they say it's like a muscle. You get used to using it and it comes a little easier. But then life knocks you over sometimes. Every day we have to choose to see the blessings in our life. And I promise you, we all have millions. Even if it's just the fact that you can tell your spouse that you love them and appreciate them. Or you can hug your kids and kiss your kids. We have a lot of blessings. And we have to choose to focus on them. And sometimes in order to focus on them, you have to deal with other things. So deal with it and get it out of the way. Turn around and look at that black dog and say, there you are. And then turn back around and look at your blessings. Every day work at it. Because this life, we have to find joy in it. We have to find a way to give our children happiness, to give them the ability to go through their challenges and still be happy with their life, to feel blessed because they see blessings all around them. There is a story that I heard that I'm sure most of you know, happened here in Israel, about Rav Führer. Everybody here familiar with him? He's a great man who helps people with a lot of difficult medical issues. And he was having a meeting with one of his financial backers in Yerushalayim late one night. And at the end of a successful meeting, they decided to go to the Kotel to give thanks to Hashem. And while they're there, they hear a woman crying, really crying. And he right away thinks to himself, maybe I could help. And then he thinks, what if it's not medical? What if it's money related? And he asks his friend, would you like to see if we can help her? So they approached this woman and they said, we hear you crying, and we want to know what we can do to help. And she tells This makes me cry. She tells them that tonight I'm coming from the wedding of the youngest of my 11 children. I don't need anything. I just came to say thank you. Okay, I want to give you all a bracha that Hashem should answer your prayers and you should take the time to say thank you. And any tears you cry should be tears of gratitude and of joy and of simcha. Thank you. Wow.